Hello, Quiet Warriors. It's Quiet Warrior 6 or Scott Stevens for our next podcast. And I have been thinking a lot about a lot of things that are happening in the world, but mostly a lot of things that are happening in my life. Excuse me. I'm trying to adjust everything and get everything set up. But it's been a hard week. It's been a hard week for me. A lot has happened in my personal life that has been really challenging, really as I say it, it sounds almost like not as challenging, but like it's been really challenging, um, like uh, soul shaking, challenging, and a lot of it is like I've questioned like who I am and like what I'm doing and and my my beliefs and my understanding of myself. Like it's been extremely challenging. And I don't know if how you guys are or what you feel like is if you've ever been like hit with some feedback and you're like, gosh, I had no idea, right? Like I had no idea. And it just like shakes you a little bit. You're like, gosh, I had no idea that I was doing this and that I had become this type of person or whatever. And so that's been my experience this past week. And it's been humbling, frustrating, scary, and among a lot of just different things. But it's also focused, and I've been trying to go back to like, how do I become a better person? How do I become a better man and make changes in my life so that I I don't know if I'll ever not be blindsided with information, but that I can at least say I'm working at it. And one of the things I did this week was my birthday. And my sister, almost all every birthday I've had for like the last 10 years, my sister sends me a gift card from Amazon. And so this time I took that gift card and I bought a couple of books. And one book I bought in particular is called The Book of Virtues. Some of you may be familiar with this book. It's 30 years old. I got the latest edition, but it's a compilation of different stories and poems about virtue, about having honor, having all the things we talk about as quiet warriors. And one of the stories in particular hit me pretty hard was a story about Genghis Khan, or at least that's who it's attributed to. Genghis Khan was a great king, right? I mean, he was powerful and wise, and he conquered much of the world. Um, and in doing so, he amassed a major amount of wealth. But he had a problem. And one of his greatest problems was he had anger issues. He was angry. He could get angry, which made him a fierce warrior, but also caused problems in his life. And this one in particular that I read about is one day he was out hunting and he was on a great hunting trip and he was out and he was on horseback. And as he got out there, he also had a hawk, and his hawk would go fly up into the air and search for prey. And he, very proud of this hawk. It was his friend, and like he was very proud of it. And this hawk would fly around, and they came to middle of the day, probably middle of the afternoon, and they came to a creek, and it had water running down it, like a little trickle of water, and it was a spring. And Genghis Khan was extremely thirsty, and he hopped off his horse, and he pulled out a small cup, and he dipped the cup into the water and began to take a drink. And when he did so, his hawk came down and knocked the cup out of his hand. And Genghis Khan was like, that's strange. And so he didn't know exactly what to think of that. And he dipped his cup again and was going to drink, and the hawk knocked it out again. And now he was angry, furious, in fact. And he looked at his hawk, he looked at his bird, and he said, don't ever do that again. And if you do it, there are severe consequences. And so he dipped his cup one more time, but this time he pulled out his sword. And as he went to drink his cup, the hawk came and it knocked the cup out. But in the motion, he took his sword and he slashed his bird and he knocked it to the ground. And he then, you know, told the bird how naughty he was or how frustrated he was with the bird and that he deserved what he got. But then he's like, well, I can't get a drink here. The bird is, and so he climbed up the spring where the spring was coming from, and he climbed up through these rocks, and he came to a pool of water, and in that pool of water laid an extremely poisonous snake. like a cobra or something to that effect. And it was dead, and it was lying in this pool of water. And all the water that was coming down beyond that was poison. And had Genghis Khan drank it, he would have died or would have been severely injured. And his hawk, when it seemed as an irritation, was in fact helping him and keeping him safe. I've reflected on that a lot since I've read it, and on my own short-sightedness and me getting angry at other people or at other situations. I've sometimes taking that step back and recognizing perhaps this person is trying to help me or the situation is trying to help me. There was a post within the Quiet Warrior community. I think it was this week or last, but it was a post of just that. Is that it was a man had posted a conversation he had with God and how he felt like God had not helped him. He'd woken up late and God didn't help him wake up late, and then he was stalled on his way to work, and he felt like God didn't clear the traffic, and he kept saying all these things to God, and then God would have an explanation. This was happening at that time, and that's why I did this, and that this was happening at this time, and that's why I did that. To the point where the man was humbled and recognized that God was doing things in his own best interest. So, Quiet Warriors, what's the lesson for us? The lesson is manyfold. There are many things to learn from this, but one I think is our anger, is to definitely take and channel our anger into things that will not, that we don't lash out, especially in the moment, that we bridle ourselves, that we have that type of self-discipline, which is what we're talking about, the Quiet Warrior principle for the month of April, that we have that discipline to discipline ourselves and our anger so that it doesn't result in disastrous circumstances. But words, I love you guys. Thank you for being on this journey. We're working to build this out a little bit more. I'm hoping to have more, to get some guests, and we'll start working towards that. But I just wanted to share that story with you and just tell you how much I appreciate you guys. Thanks for being great quiet warriors and out there striving to help your families, protect your families, provide for your families, and strengthen your community. Have a great day, gentlemen, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.